Do you want to get better grades in school? Do you want to go to a good college? This video is going to talk about growth versus fixed mindset. This is part 2 to my series on mindsets for this YouTube channel. And part 1, it was more of an introductory video. This one, we're going to dive into some more specifics based on my blog on my website on growth versus fixed mindsets. So look up part 1 if you want the more detailed beginner intro, but let's get into part 2. So you already know what growth and fixed mindset are at this point. Now let's go into more details on the potential failures and implications of a fixed mindset. So as a quick refresher, a fixed mindset, they believe all their skills, their IQ, their intelligence, their ability, their potential has already been fixed and predetermined from birth. So think of all the consequences of that. I wrote a few down, and here are some of the bigger ones. Since they think that there's nothing that they can do to change their grades in school, they're going to cheat to do so rather than learn. They're going to put in as little effort as possible to grow, to develop, to learn new things, to learn new subjects, because they think smart people don't need to try hard. Smart people already know everything. Smart people are naturally better. They're not working harder. After a negative event occurs, they'll label themselves as a negative person. And if a positive event occurs, they label themselves as that. Their identity is based on the whims of life. What about their attitude? They hide their deficiencies and flaws. They won't admit to them. They'll try and take other people's accomplishments and get credit for them. And they want to feel special, important, and different from others because they themselves just don't think that, they can change. So that's the best they can do. Can you already kind of start to see the implications of this and which area you fall into? Of course, check out Dr. Carol Dweck's work and her book for any more research or expertise or advice. So now let's check out some of the specific thought patterns of a fixed mindset. This is not who you want to be. You want to be a growth mindset person. A fixed mindset person has thoughts like this: the world is out to get me. Nothing good ever happens to me. Life handed me a bad hand. So that's really tough. And then after a failure happens, this is an area where most people really reveal themselves. They may say, a fixed mindset person may say something like, I'm a loser, I'm stuck, I suck, I'm worthless. And they may just pout about it, whine, complain, pick a fight, or sit there and cry after something like that happens. So what about a growth mindset? And here's the great part. If you have a fixed mindset, you can start to choose and change yourself into a growth mindset. So a growth mindset, they believe that their potential can't be predicted or discovered by any test. They think, they can grow and build off of where they are now. A simple measurement in a point in time means nothing since it doesn't show your progress. So here are some of their characteristics. They love a challenge. They value self-development. They know their works in progress. They stay motivated when things get tough. They're patient with how long it takes to achieve a goal. They admire the effort because even geniuses still have to work hard to succeed. You can start to see how they are. Now, what happens after a failure or during a failure for them? They say if you fail, no matter, just try again. They say never give up. They may make statements like, at least I'm still happy, healthy, and alive. They may use the scientific method and learn from their mistakes or failures, and they might say, okay, now I've learned what I did wrong, so I can improve. And that iteration helps them grow. So let's see how we can start to apply this and dive into more specific examples and studies from the book, Mindset, The Psychology of Success. Studies show these mindsets are developing even for kids starting at the age of 4 years old. They gave kids a difficult puzzle to solve, and afterwards they asked if they wanted a more challenging puzzle or the same puzzle. The growth mindset children always ask for a harder puzzle because they always wanted to stretch and grow. The fixed mindset children always ask for the same puzzle. Think about that. Studies also show that fixed mindset people are more depressed, while growth mindset people work harder to improve when depressed. Fixed mindset people do worse with labels and stereotypes. They let that affect their performance. Growth mindset people do better in school. Now, one thing I think it's important to understand is that you may have a mix of both categories depending on the area in life you're referring to. I think that's something that Dr. Dweck has mentioned in the past, and that's definitely true for me in my own life as I reflect. So I think it's important to always identify, okay, I have a little flex of this here, I have a lot of stuff here. How can I, eliminate the flex of fixed mindset and be more growth mindset oriented? Also, if you want some special secrets not revealed in her book, I got her to give us a little quote. It's about a paragraph long, directly from Professor Dweck, the author of this book this is all based on the blog of my website, which summarizes this book. So if you want that, scroll down to the bottom of the article. There's that little paragraph exclusive for my readers there for some extra tips. Now, on top of that, consider how mindsets work in real life. I have a bunch of examples of people in real life who have used a growth mindset successfully to succeed. So let's start in sports because everyone loves sports. You have Coach Wooden, one of the greatest coaches of all time in basketball. He said, "You're not a failure until you start blaming others for your mistakes." Think about that. Think about that. Was there ever a time where you were like, oh, that wasn't me, that was him or her, and that's why we failed, and it's because you are looking at this and X, Y, and Z, rather than saying, okay, maybe some of that's true, maybe none of that's true. What can I do to improve? Because I'm the only one who can change and control myself. You can't control others. So that's really cool. John Mcenroe, one of the world's best tennis players for 4 years, during his career, he would dry in his sweat with sawdust. One time, he yelled at his agent for bringing him sawdust that was ground too finely. He called it garbage and ordered him to get better sawdust immediately. Unfortunately, although John performed at a very high level, the book argues that he had a fixed mindset. He had a variety of excuses whenever he lost that were outside of his control. He overtrained, he undertrained, it was too hot, it was too cold. The tabloids affected him. Unfortunately, that attitude never proved successful. And he was never able to achieve that pinnacle, that high level that maybe a Roger Federer did, or Rafael Nadal. So think about how would Federer or Nadal think about that in a different way. If it's too hot, you don't just pout about it and complain. You ask yourself, what can I do better? I bet Nadal or Federer would say, okay, it's too hot. How can we prepare for this in the future? Maybe it's a cooling chamber before the game starts, or lots of wet cloth towels to keep you hydrated between your rounds. That's how a winner thinks. A loser is like, oh, it's their fault, it's his fault, the world sucks. He doesn't do anything to change or improve his performance. So what do you expect? He's going to lose the same game the next time in the same way. John also enjoyed being special. He threw up on a Japanese host once and loved the fact that she bowed and gave him a gift afterwards. Yeah, I don't know much about this John guy, but if that's true, it seems like a bit of a prick if you ask me. So here's some more little examples. Michael Jordan, we all know him. Many of us love him. When Michael Jordan announced his return to basketball, he said that everyone talked about him as if he was a god. He replied that he was just a human being like everyone else. Michael didn't have a fixed mindset, tendency to glorify himself. Most people think it was his natural talent that got him there. While that helped, his coaches and teammates knew it was his amazing work ethic that was key. Okay, let's move on from sports. What about business here? I chose some examples. Warren Buffett, the CEO of IBM, and Jack Welch, CEO of General Electric. So when he acquired a company that turned out to be involved in an accounting scandal, he called his top 12 managers together and told them it was his fault. He would often go on the floor himself and work with the workforce to see how he could improve. Warren Buffett, he was always unaffected by Wall Street's judgment and pressure to make quarterly projections. In many of his shareholder meetings, he said that they make less than competitors in the short term, but more in the long term. The CEO of IBM held true to long-term strategies to turn around the company. Wall Street sneered as he failed to meet short-term earning expectations. Years later, IBM had the last laugh because it returned as a dominant force in business. Now, of course, there's also some fixed mindset failures in business. Enron was the biggest example. Jeffrey Skilling lied, cheated, stealed so much that he convinced himself that he was doing the right thing. He lied about his earnings. He lied about everything. And he stole millions from the company to buy himself expensive experiences. He claimed that it wasn't his fault when the company eventually was found out to have a massive accounting scandal. He never admitted to anything wrong, and his executives are still in jail. Iacocca of Chrysler. Now, some people still think he was pretty successful, but there's certain books like this one, as well as Good to Great, that point him out as a 4-star but not 5-star executive. So in the second half of his time with Chrysler, he didn't do anything new to improve or innovate the company. In fact, he spent a lot of time going on talk shows and telling people how amazing he was, and he just reveled in that praise and so forth. And anytime he was criticized, he exiled those critics. Of course, as you would imagine, in the long term, these companies did not do that well. Okay, so let's move on from the career world more to the student world that you guys are more familiar with. Well, let's talk about women and minorities first off. Studies found that even the smallest reminder to women and minorities of their label negatively affects their performance. A growth mindset is a great way to not let barriers or labels hold you back. They found that fixed mindset people are more likely to stereotype females as worse than men. So you have to keep that in mind. Growth mindset people are less likely to stereotype, and they did not get a self-esteem boost after they stereotyped. Okay, so in the education realm, the schoolyard, you have bullies, right? Think about this study on bullying. Studies have discovered fixed mindset people lash out and seek revenge when they are bullied. Even most normal, healthy people who have a fixed mindset have a very violent thoughts of revenge after being bullied. On the other hand, growth mindset people seek to remedy the situation by counseling the bully, finding out what is wrong, and empathizing. It does give me a little flashback to my own childhood and how I dealt with some bullies. And, I don't know if it was me or what, but I ultimately decided to make them my friend. I apologize even though, that wasn't really something that was always my fault. I took the first step. I seek to understand them and, figure out why they were acting the way they did and try to become their friend. Sometimes it worked out really well. Other times it worked out decently. Okay, so think about, now for the schoolyard, we're going to end with this. A case study in the book examined a high school teacher who taught the inner cities. This was a area filled with lowest tier students, most of which were Hispanic. These students were labeled by society as dumb, mentally challenged, and having no potential. The interesting part is that this teacher managed to get more of his students to pass the advanced placement test than any other class in the nation except for 2 privileged schools. Boom! Mind-blowing. How? He adopted a growth mindset. Specifically, he viewed these children as having great potential. By treating them as smart individuals, he unleashed potential that was locked away by the negative labels. Fixed mindset students don't value effort and believe their success, performance, and intelligence in school can't be improved or challenged. Their performance in school is often a label of their worth. So, how do you teach a growth mindset? Create a culture where you praise the right mindsets and behaviors wherever you can. Think about that. Their belief in themselves changed, which allowed them to try and strive harder. And that simple switch in belief made all the difference. Thanks for watching. See you later.